Three-wheeled vehicles were introduced in the 1990s as exotic concept vehicles. This one is like a motorcycle on steroids. It has what's called a reverse trike design, 2 wheels in front and 1 in the back. It hugs the road like a race car, yet is legal to drive through city streets. This vehicle goes from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in just 4.1 seconds. No faster than a motorcycle, but it definitely turns heads. Production begins with 34 steel tube components that will form the vehicle's chassis. A worker places them in an assembly jig. This positions the tubes for welding. After clamping the components in place, it takes the worker about 4 hours to weld 68 different areas together. For efficiency, 13 of the larger, more complex structures are pre-assembled. The steel tubes measure 3.8 centimeters in diameter, but the metal itself is only 1.5 millimeters thick. They're like those used in the aviation industry, strong yet lightweight. This company uses a visual reference method to assemble smaller parts of the vehicle. Before starting, a worker places 80 components on a board with labels that identify them. This way, he's certain he won't forget any nuts, bolts, bearings, brackets, or horns. Using an electric crane, a worker hoists the vehicle's 4-cylinder, 152 horsepower, 1200 cc motorcycle engine into the chassis, now tinted black. Using a pneumatic wrench, he attaches it with 6 bolts and 6 nuts. Here, a worker assembles the 50 parts that make up what's called the footbox. This includes aluminum clutch, brake, and gas pedals. The brake pedal is thicker to withstand more aggressive use. The vehicle decelerates from 100 kilometers an hour to 0 in just less than 29 meters. He coats part of the brake pedal with a liquid sealant so vibrations won't loosen it. Another worker then mounts 2 output hoses and 2 plastic reservoirs for brake fluid. The brake fluid must withstand heat of 343 degrees Celsius, 30 degrees hotter than what's required for most cars. This enables better engine performance. He installs the footbox onto the front of the chassis using 3 bolts. Controlling the speed with the footbox is crucial, since top speed for the vehicle is 230 kilometers an hour. Next, he installs part of the suspension system, a cylindrical gas shock absorber. This attaches to the brake system, which is a zinc-plated rotor and an aluminum caliper. Then they attach what's called the 4-into-1 exhaust manifold. The 4 pipes merge into one to vent the exhaust fumes from the engine. They install the electric fan and radiator assembly. Next, a worker attaches a removable leather-covered aluminum driving wheel to the steering column. The driving wheel locks into place with a spring-loaded latch system. Just like a race car, you attach the steering wheel after you sit in the driver's seat so that you can get inside the vehicle. The collapsible steering column is part of the instrument cluster. This includes dials showing the vehicle's speed, mileage, and fuel. There are also switches for turning signals, hazard flashers, high and low beam lights, and to start and kill the engine. Next, workers install the rear wheel to another part of the suspension, called a swing arm. They attach it with 1 bolt that's nearly half a meter long and 2 smaller bolts. Workers then install a chain on the rear wheel assembly. When the vehicle's running, the chain's 94 links revolve on 2 sprockets to make the wheel turn. Rubber O-rings on each link prevent dust from damaging the chain. Finally, workers attach 19 molded fiberglass body parts. This factory offers 6 standard colors and several custom colors. When assembled, the vehicle is nearly 3.5 meters long, almost 2 meters wide, and just over a meter high. If you have a motorcycle license and a spare $50,000, you too can burn the pavement on this mean set of wheels. If you think a baseball bat is a pretty simple thing, well, you're out in left field. Making a bat means balancing things like weight and thickness. The material it's made of can make a difference. Metal bats hit the ball faster. However, the pros use wood bats because of league regulations, and even the type of wood might impact the score. Barry Bonds cracked a home run record in 2001 with a wood bat like this, one made of maple, instead of the usual white ash. They can never tell just by looking at it that a chunk of maple has what it takes to make a good bat. So they weigh it to make sure the wood is really as thick and heavy as it appears. Next, pointed prongs grip the wood and spin it, while a carbide cutter rounds it. This is a very modern lathe called an XY machine. The rounded blank goes into a room called the library, joining others on the shelf that are waiting for their chance at the big leagues. A worker selects one of the blanks to fill an order that specifies a certain model and size. He weighs it again to make sure it measures up to what the player has ordered. The blank goes onto the XY machine and spins. A computer guides the cutter as it moves on rails and carves into the blank. It whittles 2.5 centimeters of wood from the blank in order to form a handle. It takes a total of 3 passes on this cutter to make the rough shape of a baseball bat, but it's quick work, completed in just 3 minutes. Now it's time for another weighing in. The bat is substantially lighter, which is what they want. Next, he measures the end of a completed bat with a caliper. Using a square-edged scraper, he rounds the knob as the bat spins on a more traditional lathe. He measures as he cuts. With another caliper, he checks the thickness of a completed bat and compares it to the one he's just carved. Now he takes a turning tool called a skew chisel. With its pointed tip, he cuts into the bat's handle, just above the knob, to narrow the shoulder. Again, he measures as he cuts to make sure the diameter is just right. Using the skew chisel, he shapes the slope of the bat, repeatedly checking with the caliper to make sure it meets specifications. He slims down the handle a little more. Then he angles the top of the knob with the chisel. He shapes the rest of it with a square-end chisel. Next, he curves the bat's barrel using the same tool. This gets rid of sharp edges that would cause a ball's impact to ripple down and jar the player. Then he goes back to the knob and completes the shaping with the skew-end chisel. Because the tool is extremely sharp, he can carve very precisely. The bat is now within 14 grams of its final weight. Using an electric sander, he smooths down some of the rough edges. He switches to a finer grit to finish off the job. As he sands, he measures, because this isn't just about getting the surface smooth. The bat has to be exactly the right size and weight for the player it's being made for. Now he places the bat's knob in an end mill. A spinning carbide disc cuts around the holes made by the pointed grippers on the lathes, producing a gentle scoop. Next, a bigger disc carves into the barrel, cupping it. Some players prefer a cupped bat because it balances differently. Now he places the bat on the scale for the final weighing, and it's exactly what the player ordered. He brushes paint onto the barrel and rubs stain into the lower half of the bat. He presses decals onto the bat so it sports both the brand name and distributor. Then he stamps the model number in gold ink and tops everything off with a light coat of varnish. Now this maple bat is ready for the big leagues and some heavy hitting.